Now, let's begin. Damon Britton had learned to compartmentalize his life into neat, separate boxes. In one box, the father who attended his daughter's art gallery openings and remembered to water her apartment plants when she traveled. In another, the ghost who moved through darkness with a suppressed pistol, eliminating threats the FBI couldn't touch through legal channels. For 23 years, these boxes never touched, until the night they collided. The evening started with Emily's laughter. Damon sat at a corner table in Giovanni's, a family-owned Italian restaurant in Baltimore's Little Italy, watching his daughter glow in the candlelight. She wore her mother's pearls, the one Sarah had been wearing the night the drunk driver took her 12 years ago. Emily had Sarah's same auburn hair, same infectious energy that filled whatever room she entered. "Dad, you're doing that staring thing again," Emily teased, squeezing Christopher Harrison's hand. Her fiancé, a public defender with genuinely good intentions, smiled warmly at Damon. Christopher was the kind of man who still opened doors and meant it when he asked how your day was. Exactly the kind of person Damon had hoped Emily would find. "Just thinking about how your mother would have loved this," Damon said, raising his wine glass. "To new beginnings." The toast was interrupted by screeching tires outside. Damon's instincts, honed by 2 decades of hunting the most dangerous criminals in America, flared instantly. His hand moved toward his concealed weapon, even as 4 men burst through the restaurant's entrance. The leader stood 6'3", with prison tattoos crawling up his neck and a wild look that came from too much cocaine and too little conscience. Wade Monroe. Damon recognized him immediately from bureau files. Leader of the Monroe Gang, a ruthless organization that controlled drug trafficking from Baltimore to Richmond. Wade's brother Curtis had been arrested 3 months ago by local police, with Damon providing the anonymous tip that led to the bust. Curtis was looking at life for killing a federal witness. But Wade didn't know Damon Britton, the FBI assassin. He only knew Detective Damon Britton of the Baltimore PD, the cover identity Damon had maintained for 18 years. "Which one of you is Britton?" Wade's voice cut through the restaurant like breaking glass. Patrons screamed, scrambling for exits. Wade's men, 3 heavily armed gang members, blocked the doors. Damon stood slowly, hands visible. "I'm Britton. Whatever this is, let these people go." Wade's eyes were bloodshot, unfocused with rage. He spotted Emily, saw her resemblance to Damon, and smiled. A terrible, broken thing. "Your daughter? Leave her out of this. You took my brother." Wade crossed the restaurant in long strides. "Curtis is all I got. Our parents died when he was 6. I raised him, fed him, kept him alive. And you put him in a cage." Christopher Harrison stood, positioning himself between Wade and Emily. "Sir, whatever's happening here, violence isn't." The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Christopher's head snapped back, his body crumpling to the floor. Emily's scream was a sound Damon would hear in his nightmares forever. Raw, primal, completely shattered. Everything that happened next occurred in fragments. Wade grabbing Emily by her hair. Damon lunging forward, only to take a rifle but to the temple from one of Wade's men. The sensation of blood pouring down his face. Emily's terrified eyes meeting his as Wade dragged her toward the door. 5 days, Wade shouted back at Damon. "That's how long before Curtis's trial. Every day, I'm going to make your little girl hurt. And you're going to watch." The last thing Damon saw before losing consciousness was Emily's hand reaching for him, Christopher's blood pooling around his fallen body, and the restaurant door slamming shut. Damon woke in a hospital bed 6 hours later. The attending physician, a weary-looking woman named Dr. Rita Neal, informed him he'd suffered concussion and 10 stitches. The Baltimore PD had arrived at Giovanni's to find carnage. Christopher Harrison dead, 15 witnesses in shock, and Detective Damon Britton unconscious in a pool of blood. His FBI handler, Supervisory Special Agent Preston Cabrera, arrived within the hour. Preston was a compact man with steel-gray hair and the kind of eyes that had seen too much. They'd worked together for 14 years, with Preston running interference while Damon eliminated targets the Bureau couldn't officially touch: cartel leaders, domestic terrorists, corrupt officials with too many connections. The Baltimore PD is treating this as a kidnapping, Preston said quietly, closing the hospital room door. They don't know about your real work. Far as they're concerned, you're just a detective whose daughter was taken by a gang leader seeking revenge. Wade Monroe. Damon's voice was hollow. He thinks I'm just a cop who helped arrest his brother. Curtis Monroe goes to trial in 5 days. Federal prosecutors have him cold. Life without parole is guaranteed. Preston paused. Wade isn't thinking rationally. His entire organization is on high alert, expecting retaliation. But Damon, if you go after them now. He has Emily. I know. Preston's expression softened. But you can't do this alone. Let me bring in a tactical team. We can... Damon's phone buzzed. An incoming video message from an unknown number. His hand shook as he opened it. The video showed Emily bound to a chair in what looked like a warehouse. Her face was already swelling, one eye nearly shut. Wade Monroe stood behind her, smiling at the camera. Day 1, Detective Britton. See what happens when you F***K with family. The video cut off. Damon stared at the blank screen, his grief calcifying into something colder, harder. Preston stood silently, understanding what was happening but powerless to stop it. I need you to do something for me, Damon finally said. His voice had changed. No longer the warm father from the restaurant, but the predator the FBI deployed when all other options failed. Tell Baltimore PD I'm taking emergency leave. Keep them out of my way. What are you planning? Wade Monroe wants to show me pain. He doesn't understand what he's awakened. Damon met Preston's eyes. I've spent 23 years keeping my daughter away from my other life. She was the one pure thing I had left. And now he's taken that and recorded it, sent it to me like a trophy. Damon, Emily is already dead. The words felt like swallowing glass. Wade won't let her go. Whatever happens over these 5 days, he's going to kill her. So I'm going to make sure every single person responsible knows her name before they die. Preston was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call, and said simply, Britton is going off-grid. No contact, no oversight. Flag it as deep cover. After Preston left, Damon discharged himself against medical advice. He drove to a storage unit in Curtis Park, one of 6 locations around the city where he kept emergency supplies. This one contained weapons the FBI didn't know about, documents under false names, and $200,000 in cash, his escape fund if his double life ever collapsed. He also kept records. Every target the FBI had ever assigned him, every criminal organization he'd studied, every weakness he'd documented. The Monroe gang was there, a thick folder he'd compiled 2 years ago when Curtis first appeared on federal radar. Wade Monroe was the muscle, impulsive and violent. Curtis had been the brains, running their drug operation with frightening efficiency. But with Curtis arrested, Wade had promoted his inner circle. 3 men who'd been with the Monroe brothers since their teenage years. Oscar Newman, their accountant, a numbers genius who laundered money through seemingly legitimate businesses. Alan McGrath, their enforcer, an ex-Marine with dishonorable discharge for excessive violence. Andres Hopper, their supplier connection, a man with ties to Mexican cartels who could move product across borders like water. And there were others. Rhonda McKnight, Wade's girlfriend, and the only person he trusted completely. She ran their prostitution ring with calculated cruelty. Gary Buchanan, a corrupt Baltimore cop who fed the Monroe gang information about police operations. Derek Walter, a club owner whose establishments served as fronts for drug distribution. Damon spread the files across the storage unit floor, studying faces, addresses, patterns. The FBI had been building a RICO case against the entire organization, but it would take months to bring everyone down legally. Damon didn't have months. He had 5 days. His phone buzzed again. Another video. This time Emily was screaming. By the 3rd day, Damon had received 9 videos. Each one worse than the last. Each one sent at random times. 2 a.m., noon, 6 p.m., designed to keep him constantly on edge, never sleeping, always waiting for the next notification. The Baltimore PD had issued an Amber Alert, but the FBI had quietly quashed it. Preston's doing, Damon realized, giving him the space to work without law enforcement interference. The media reported Emily Britton as missing, Christopher Harrison as murdered, and the police as following leads. None of which was true. Damon hadn't slept since the hospital. He'd spent 72 hours surveilling the Monroe gang's operations, tracking their movements, identifying their routines. The organization had gone to ground after Emily's kidnapping, but they still had to conduct business. Drug shipments still needed to move. Money still needed to be laundered. And that meant patterns Damon could exploit. He started with Gary Buchanan. The corrupt cop met his Monroe gang contact every Tuesday night at a strip club called Diamonds, owned by Derek Walter. Buchanan would arrive at 11 p.m., stay exactly 1 hour, and leave with an envelope of cash. Simple, predictable, and fatally stupid. Damon waited in the club's parking lot, watching Buchanan emerge at midnight with his typical swagger. The cop climbed into his unmarked police car, never noticing the GPS tracker Damon had placed earlier. Following Buchanan home was easy. The cop lived in a modest house in Dundalk, divorced, no kids. He parked in his garage and went inside, lights clicking on throughout the house. Damon waited 30 minutes, then approached through the backyard. The sliding door lock was laughably easy to pick. 30 seconds, and he was inside. Buchanan was in the kitchen, bourbon in hand, counting his bribe money at the table. Jesus! Buchanan jumped when he saw Damon, reaching for his service weapon. But Damon was faster, his suppressed pistol already aimed at the cop's center mass. Hands on the table. Don't be stupid. Buchanan complied, recognizing Damon from the news coverage. Detective Britton, man, I'm sorry about your daughter. We're doing everything we can to. You're on Wade Monroe's payroll. Have been for 3 years. Damon circled the table, keeping his weapon trained. You fed him information about Curtis's arrest. You warned him when the raids were coming. And you knew he was planning something after Curtis got picked up. I don't know what you're talking about. The Bureau has recordings. You're in a prison, Gary. But that's not why I'm here. Damon pulled out his phone, showed Buchanan a photo of Emily from before her kidnapping. Smiling, vibrant, full of life. This is my daughter. The one Wade Monroe is torturing because you helped his organization stay ahead of the law. Buchanan's face went pale. Look, I never wanted anyone to get hurt. I just needed the money. Where is she? I don't know. Wade doesn't tell me that kind of. Damon shot him in the kneecap. The suppressed pistol made a soft sound, but Buchanan's scream was loud enough to wake neighbors. Damon moved fast, stuffing a dish towel in the cop's mouth, muffling the sound. Try again. Where is Emily? Through the gag, Buchanan tried to speak. Damon removed the towel partially. Warehouse, South Baltimore, near the port. I swear that's all I know. Which warehouse? I don't know. Wade has 3 different locations they use. I can give you addresses. Damon let him talk, memorizing the locations. Then he pulled out a phone. Not his own, but a burner with an encrypted connection to Preston Cabrera. There's evidence of police corruption at this address, Damon said when Preston answered. Anonymous tip. You want to move fast. He hung up before Preston could respond, looking back at Buchanan. The cop was crying now, blood pooling around his shattered knee. The FBI will be here in 20 minutes. You're going to tell them everything about the Monroe gang's operations. Every location, every name, every dirty secret. Because if you don't, Damon leaned close. I'll come back. And next time, I won't be asking questions. He left through the back door, disappearing into the night. One down. The 4th video arrived at 3 a.m. on day 4. This time, Emily wasn't screaming. She was barely conscious. Her face so swollen Damon almost didn't recognize her. Wade Monroe stood beside her, cocaine residue visible around his nostrils, his movements erratic. You're probably thinking you're going to save her, detective. Maybe you got some cops putting together a rescue. But here's the thing. Even if you find us, I'll kill her the second I hear sirens. So you got a choice. Stand down and watch her suffer, or make a move and watch her die. The video ended with Wade striking Emily across the face, her head lolling to the side. Damon played it 3 more times, studying every detail. The warehouse had concrete walls, industrial lighting, and what looked like shipping containers in the background. The sound had an echo suggesting high ceilings. And through a window behind Wade, Damon could see the distinctive red lights of a cargo crane, the kind used at Baltimore's port terminals. He compared this to the 3 addresses Buchanan had provided. 2 were generic warehouses, but 1 was adjacent to the port's container terminal. That was it. But a direct assault would get Emily killed. Wade had made that clear. So Damon needed a different approach, something that would draw Wade away from Emily while keeping the gang leader distracted. He needed bait, and he knew exactly what would work. Curtis Monroe's trial started in 16 hours. The federal prosecutors had built their case carefully, and Curtis's defense attorney had already signaled he was advising his client to take a plea. But Wade didn't care about legal strategy. He cared about his brother. What if Curtis suddenly escaped custody? Damon called Preston from another burner phone. "I need to speak with the federal prosecutor handling Curtis Monroe." "Damon, what are you?" "Just do it. I have a plan, but it needs to happen in the next 12 hours. 3 hours later, Damon sat across from Assistant U.S. Attorney Terry Dale in a secure FBI conference room. Preston was there too, looking increasingly concerned. Terry was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd prosecuted everyone from mob bosses to terrorist cells. "This is insane," she said after hearing Damon's proposal. "You want me to arrange Curtis Monroe's escape from federal custody?" "Not actually escape. Just make it look like he escaped." Damon spread out a map of the federal courthouse and detention center. "Curtis is being held in a cell on the 3rd floor. Tomorrow morning, during transport to his trial, there's a 7-minute window when he's moved through an underground tunnel. If that tunnel were to experience a power failure, and the backup generators failed, and somehow Curtis's restraints came loose, we'd have every law enforcement agency in 3 states looking for him," Terry interrupted. "The media would crucify us. My career would be finished." Wade Monroe would also abandon that warehouse and everyone in it to search for his brother. Damon met her eyes. "My daughter is dying. Every hour she's with Wade, she's experiencing agony I can't even imagine. But Wade has her in a fortress surrounded by armed men. I can't breach it without her getting killed. However, if Wade thinks Curtis is loose in the city..." Preston leaned forward. "Wade would mobilize his entire organization to find Curtis and get him out of the country. Every resource, every man, every safe house would be activated. The warehouse would be left with minimal security. And I could get Emily out," Damon finished. Terry was quiet for a long time. "If this goes wrong, if Curtis actually escapes, if someone gets killed, I'll take full responsibility. Put it in writing. But please, she's my daughter." The plea in his voice, the raw desperation of a father watching his child die, finally broke through Terry's professional reserve. She looked at Preston, who nodded slightly. 12 hours, she said. "We'll stage the escape at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Curtis will be moved to a secure FBI location that Wade doesn't know about. But we're tracking him with every resource available, so when Wade comes looking, we'll be ready." "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If your daughter dies because of this plan, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison." Damon nodded. It was a price he was willing to pay. At 7:55 a.m. on day 5, Curtis Monroe's prisoner transport van departed the federal detention center for the courthouse 6 blocks away. At 8:03 a.m., an electrical fire in the underground tunnel system knocked out power and backup generators simultaneously. At 8:06 a.m., Curtis Monroe was discovered missing from his restraints, with a small ventilation grate hanging open. By 8:15 a.m., every news station in Baltimore was reporting the escape. By 8:30 a.m., Wade Monroe's phone was ringing off the hook as his gang members reported the news. Damon watched from a rooftop across from the port warehouse, high-powered binoculars pressed to his eyes. Through a second-story window, he could see Wade pacing frantically, phone to his ear, his body language radiating panic and excitement. Then Wade started barking orders. Men emerged from the warehouse. Alan McGrath, Andres Hopper, Derek Walter, and 6 others Damon recognized from surveillance. They piled into 3 SUVs and roared away, leaving the warehouse quiet, but not empty. Damon counted at least 2 guards remaining, and somewhere inside was Emily if she was still alive. He'd prepared for this. The warehouse had 3 entrances: main loading dock, side door, and roof access. The guard would be watching the ground-level doors, which meant the roof was his best option. Damon moved fast, crossing the street and scaling the adjacent building's fire escape. The warehouse roof was accessible via a narrow gap he could jump. He landed softly, immediately crouching low. The roof access door was locked. Damon placed a small explosive charge, careful, precise, just enough to blow the lock without alerting the guards below. 3 seconds after detonation, he was through the door and moving down a metal staircase. The warehouse interior was exactly as the videos had shown. Concrete walls, high ceilings, shipping containers stacked along the walls. Damon could hear voices below. 2 men arguing about whether to stay or join the search for Curtis. Wade said, "Guard the girl." "That's what we're doing." "Yeah, but Curtis is out there, man. We should be helping look for him." "You want to tell Wade you abandoned his insurance policy?" "Go ahead." Damon crept along a catwalk above them, spotting Emily in the center of the warehouse floor. She was still bound to the chair, head slumped forward, unmoving. His heart seized. Was she already dead? Then she shifted slightly, and relief flooded through him. Alive. Barely, but alive. The 2 guards were 20 feet from her, both armed with assault rifles. A direct confrontation would risk hitting Emily with stray gunfire. Damon needed to separate them. He pulled out his phone, dialed the warehouse landline number he'd found in the Monroe gang's financial records. Below, a phone mounted on the wall began ringing. Both guards looked at each other. "You think that's Wade?" "Could be." "Answer it." One guard walked toward the phone while the other stayed near Emily. "Perfect." Damon waited until the first guard lifted the receiver. "Hello," and then fired. The suppressed shot hit the guard in the head, and he dropped without a sound. The second guard spun around, raising his rifle, trying to locate the shooter. Damon was already moving, leaping from the catwalk to a shipping container, then sliding down its side. He landed behind the second guard and fired twice, center mass, then head. The guard collapsed. Emily's eyes opened at the sound. When she saw Damon, her expression cycled through disbelief, hope, and overwhelming relief. He rushed to her, cutting through her restraints with a tactical knife. "Dad!" Her voice was a broken whisper. Her face was a mass of bruises, several teeth missing, one arm bent at an unnatural angle. Burns covered her arms, cigarette burns, dozens of them. "Christopher, is he?" "I'm so sorry, honey. He's gone." Damon gathered her carefully, mindful of her injuries. "But I've got you now. You're safe." "Wade, he said he'd kill me. Said he'd make you watch. He's not going to touch you again. I promise." He carried her toward the exit, moving as quickly as he dared. But before they reached the door, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Cute plan with my brother. But I left cameras in the warehouse. Did you really think I'd abandon my leverage?" Damon's blood went cold. He looked up, spotting the small cameras mounted in the corners. Wade had been watching the entire time. Another text. "You got 5 minutes before I come back with everyone. Run if you want. But I'll find you. I'll always find you." Emily was crying against his chest. "Dad, I'm scared." "I know, baby. But I need you to trust me." He looked around the warehouse, his tactical mind working through options. Run and Wade would hunt them forever. Stay and face an entire gang in a fight he couldn't win. Or option 3. "Emily, can you walk?" "I think so." He set her down gently, keeping one arm around her for support. Then he pulled out his phone and called Preston. "I need you to lock onto my location and send every tactical team you have. SWAT, HRT, everyone. You have 4 minutes." "Damon, what?" "Wade Monroe is coming here with his entire organization. I'm about to give you the opportunity to arrest the entire Monroe gang in one place. But you need to move now." He hung up and looked at Emily. "I need you to hide. Behind those containers, there's a space where you'll be safe. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens, you stay hidden until the FBI arrives. Understand? What are you going to do? Make sure Wade Monroe never hurts anyone again." Emily hugged him gently because of her broken ribs and whispered, "I love you, Dad. I love you too. Now go." She limped toward the containers, disappearing into the shadows. Damon positioned himself in the center of the warehouse, directly under the lights, making himself an obvious target. Then he picked up one of the dead guard's assault rifles and waited. 3 minutes later, the warehouse doors burst open. Wade Monroe strode in, flanked by Alan McGrath, Andres Hopper, Derek Walter, and 12 heavily armed gang members. They fanned out in a semicircle, weapons trained on Damon. Wade's face was twisted with rage and cocaine-fueled madness. You think you're clever? You think staging my brother's escape would make me abandon my revenge? I think you're a coward who tortures innocent people because your brother got arrested for killing a federal witness. Damon kept his voice steady, the rifle held loosely but ready. Curtis deserves life in prison, and you deserve worse. Where's the girl? Dead. I shot her before you arrived. Couldn't let you have the satisfaction. The lie hit Wade like a physical blow. For a moment, his face crumpled, genuine grief breaking through the cocaine haze. Then the rage returned, doubled. You killed her. You were going to anyway. At least this way. She died quickly instead of suffering more. It was a calculated risk. If Wade believed Emily was dead, he'd have no reason to search for her. All his fury would focus on Damon. I'm going to make you suffer for that, Wade snarled. Alan, shoot him in the knees. Let's see how tough he is when. The warehouse doors exploded inward. FBI hostage rescue team operators poured through, weapons raised, voices shouting commands. FBI, drop your weapons. Hands up. Get on the ground. The Monroe gang members hesitated, caught between Wade's orders and federal agents with automatic weapons. Alan McGrath made the fatal mistake of raising his rifle. 2 HRT operators fired simultaneously, dropping him. Chaos erupted. Some gang members threw down their weapons. Others tried to fight. Andres Hopper sprinted for a side exit, only to run into more FBI agents. Derek Walter took a round in the shoulder and went down screaming. Wade Monroe, surrounded and outgunned, did the last thing Damon expected. He smiled. You're a cop, Wade said, loud enough to be heard over the commotion. Which means you can't just execute me. I'll go to trial, get a lawyer, maybe even walk on some technicality. And one day, when you least expect it, I'll find you again. Damon met his eyes. I'm not a cop. Before Wade could process that, Damon raised his rifle and fired 3 times. Center mass, precise, professional. Wade Monroe collapsed, blood spreading across the concrete floor. The HRT operators froze. Preston Cabrera rushed forward, face pale. Damon, what did you? He had a weapon. He was reaching for it. Damon's voice was flat, empty. Self-defense. It was a lie. Everyone in the warehouse knew it was a lie. Wade had been surrendering, hands visible. But Preston looked at Damon, really looked at him, at the father who'd spent 5 days watching his daughter tortured, and made a decision. Suspect Wade Monroe reached for weapon. Officer Britton fired in self-defense. Clear the scene. The FBI operators handcuffed the surviving gang members. Paramedics rushed in, treating the wounded. And Emily emerged from her hiding place, limping toward Damon with tears streaming down her face. He caught her, held her, and for the first time in 5 days, allowed himself to break. 3 months later, Damon stood outside Baltimore Washington Medical Center, watching through a window as Emily underwent physical therapy. Her physical injuries had healed, the broken arm set, the burns treated, the dental work completed. But the psychological scars ran deeper. She had nightmares every night, panic attacks in crowds, a fear of enclosed spaces that made even elevators terrifying. The therapist said it would take years, maybe forever, before she felt truly safe again. But she was alive. That was what mattered. Preston appeared beside him, 2 coffee cups in hand. He offered one to Damon. The Justice Department finished their investigation into Wade Monroe's death. They ruled it a justified shooting. You're clear. Because you lied for me. Because the alternative was watching a good man go to prison for doing what had to be done. Preston sipped his coffee. The Monroe gang is finished. We arrested 47 members, seized $12 million in assets, and shut down their entire operation. Curtis Monroe took a plea deal. Life without parole in exchange for testifying against the remaining members. And the others? Alan McGrath died at the scene. Andres Hopper is facing trafficking charges. Derek Walter, Oscar Newman, and Rhonda McKnight are all cooperating. Gary Buchanan is serving 20 years for corruption. Damon nodded. Justice of a sort. Not the justice he'd wanted, which was every single person who helped Wade Monroe dying slowly and painfully, but justice nonetheless. What happens now? Preston asked. You've been on administrative leave since the shooting. Are you coming back? Damon thought about it. The FBI assassin program, the double life, the constant deception. For 23 years, he'd justified it as necessary. Someone had to do the dark work that kept the country safe. But those justifications fell hollow now. I'm done. File whatever paperwork you need. Damon Britton, the FBI assassin, is retired. And Detective Britton, also retired. I'm just going to be a father now. It's all I ever wanted to be anyway. Preston smiled sadly. She's lucky to have you. Inside, Emily finished her therapy session. She spotted Damon through the window and waved, her smile fragile but genuine. Christopher was gone, buried 3 months ago, with Damon standing over his grave, apologizing to a dead man for bringing violence into his life. But Emily was here, surviving, slowly rebuilding herself. Damon waved back, and for the first time since Giovanni's restaurant, he felt something other than rage and grief. Hope, just a flicker, but it was there. 6 months after the warehouse, Damon and Emily moved to a small town in western Maryland, far from Baltimore and its memories. Emily enrolled in online art classes, slowly reconnecting with her passion for painting. Damon got a job as a consultant for corporate security, boring, legitimate, with no weapons and no lies. They had dinner together every night, talked about Emily's artwork, about safe topics like movies and books. They avoided mentioning Christopher, the restaurant, the 5 days. Some wounds were too deep to probe. One evening, Emily set down her fork and looked at her father. I've been thinking about that night at Giovanni's. How you moved when Wade's men came in, like you knew what to do before it happened. Damon's heart rate spiked. I was a cop. Training kicks in. Dad, her voice was gentle but firm. I'm not stupid. The way you rescued me, the way Wade died. You're not just a cop. He considered lying. But Emily had survived hell because of his secrets. She deserved the truth. I work for the FBI, not as an investigator, as someone who handled problems they couldn't solve legally. I eliminated threats. Bad people who were too powerful or too connected to touch through the justice system. Emily absorbed this. Like an assassin. Yes. How many people have you killed? More than I can count. Less than I probably should have. She was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, when Wade had me in that warehouse, when he was hurting me, I kept thinking about how you'd save me. I knew you would. And when you did, when you shot those guards and carried me out, I wasn't surprised. Because that's who you are, someone who protects the people he loves, no matter what it costs. Tears pricked Damon's eyes. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from Wade. If I'd been faster, if I'd moved differently. Dad, stop. You saved me. That's what matters. Emily reached across the table, took his hand. And you made sure Wade could never hurt anyone else. I'm glad he's dead. Does that make me a bad person? No. It makes you human. They sat together as the sun set through the kitchen window, two survivors learning to live with their scars. Outside, the world continued turning. But in this moment, in this small house far from the violence, they were safe. Damon had spent 23 years living a double life, keeping his daughter away from the darkness. In the end, the darkness found her anyway. But instead of destroying her, it revealed her strength. Emily was more than Sarah's daughter or Damon's little girl. She was a survivor. And that, Damon realized, was the only victory that mattered. 1 year after Giovanni's, Emily held her first art exhibition since the kidnapping. The gallery was in Baltimore, a choice that surprised Damon, but Emily insisted. I won't let Wade Monroe take this city from me. It's where I grew up, where I fell in love, where I became who I am. The exhibition was titled 5 Days, a series of abstract paintings that captured Emily's trauma without explicitly depicting it. Slashes of red and black, fractured shapes that suggested broken bones and shattered hopes, but also splashes of gold and white that represented survival and resilience. Damon stood in the gallery's corner, watching collectors and critics examine Emily's work. Preston was there too, having flown in from D.C. to support them. They stood together in comfortable silence, two men who'd walked through fire and come out scarred but alive. "She's remarkable," Preston said quietly, "taking her trauma and transforming it into something beautiful. She gets that from her mother." Damon's eyes never left Emily as she discussed one of her paintings with an interested buyer. "Sarah always said art was how we make sense of chaos. Have you talked to her about Christopher?" "Sometimes. She loved him. Still does. But she's learning to live with the grief." Damon paused. "We both are." The exhibition was a success. By the end of the evening, Emily had sold 6 paintings and received commissions for 3 more. She glowed with pride, the same infectious energy Damon remembered from before the kidnapping. Not quite the same. Trauma had left its marks, but close enough that he could almost pretend the last year had been a nightmare rather than reality. As guests filed out, a woman approached Damon. She was in her 50s, dressed professionally, with kind eyes. "Detective Britton? I'm Jody Everett. I'm a therapist who specializes in trauma recovery, and I wanted to tell you, what you did for your daughter, how you saved her, it's extraordinary. Many fathers wouldn't have been capable. I did what any parent would do." "No." Jody's voice was firm. "Most people freeze in crisis. You acted. And because of that, Emily is alive and healing. Don't diminish your role in her survival." After she left, Emily joined Damon, exhaustion evident in her eyes, but satisfaction in her smile. "Did you see how much interest there was in the paintings? Christopher would have been so proud." "He would have." Damon hugged her carefully, still mindful of psychological triggers. "I'm proud too." "Dad, can I ask you something? Do you ever regret killing Wade? I mean, legally, morally, do you wish you'd let him go to trial?" Damon thought about it. Honest answer, no. Wade Monroe was a rabid animal who tortured innocent people for pleasure. He didn't deserve a trial or a chance at appeal. He deserved exactly what he got, a bullet in an unmarked grave. "Good." Emily's voice was fierce. "Because I don't regret it either. And I don't want you carrying guilt over giving me justice." They left the gallery together, father and daughter, walking through Baltimore's streets under the glow of streetlights. Somewhere in this city, the Monroe gang's remnants still operated, smaller, weaker, but present. Somewhere else, other criminals were planning other atrocities. But for tonight, Damon Britton wasn't an FBI assassin or a vigilante or a hunter of men. He was just a father, walking his daughter home, grateful for every moment they had together. Emily had asked once whether her survival made her strong or lucky. Damon told her it was both, strength to endure Wade's torture, luck that her father was someone capable of finding her. But the truth was simpler. Emily survived because she was loved. And love, Damon had learned, was the most powerful force in the world. It could drive a man to impossible acts, sustain a woman through unimaginable pain, and ultimately bring both of them back from the edge of darkness. Wade Monroe thought he was inflicting ultimate punishment by taking Emily. He didn't understand that in doing so, he'd guaranteed his own destruction. Because there was no force in heaven or hell that could stop a father protecting his daughter. Not the law, not the FBI, not an entire gang of criminals. Nothing. And in the end, that's exactly what Damon had proven. Wade wanted Damon to know his daughter's name in her final moments. Instead, Wade died knowing he'd made a fatal mistake. Mistaking a detective for just a cop. Mistaking a father's love for weakness. Mistaking survival for victory. Emily Britton's name was known now, but not because of her death. Because of her life, her art, her resilience. She'd taken the worst thing Wade Monroe could inflict and transformed it into beauty and meaning. That was the ultimate revenge. Not Wade's death, though that helped, but Emily's refusal to let him define her. As they reached their car, Emily paused. "Dad, thank you. For everything. You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do. You saved my life. You gave me a second chance. And you taught me that sometimes justice doesn't come from courts or laws. Sometimes it comes from people willing to do what's necessary." Damon met her eyes, Sarah's eyes, reflecting streetlight and strength in equal measure, and nodded. Let's go home. They drove into the night, leaving Baltimore behind, leaving the memories and trauma and grief behind, moving forward into whatever future they could build together. It wouldn't be easy. The nightmares would continue. The triggers would appear at unexpected moments. The loss of Christopher would always ache, but they would survive, because that's what the Britons did. And Wade Monroe, rotting in an unmarked grave, would never touch them again. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.